The information that I get, I don't trust from the government, is what I'm saying. The numbers of COVID, I don't trust. Not saying I don't believe in COVID. Please don't take this the wrong way. I'm not anti-COVID. I wear my mask. I didn't travel for the holidays because of COVID. I respect the disease for what it is. But what the government puts forth, I get a little nervous about, because they tell us things, governors, mayors, they say don't do this because this disease is very deadly, and they're doing the opposite of exactly what they tell us. From the top down, we're getting false information and to scare the American public, including me and my family, and say this is the most contagious virus strain of the virus yet. 2 people have it. Don't scare the American public.
But what if it is? In the Erica, jump in.
Well, no, I don't disagree that we shouldn't just jump to conclusions, because we've already learned our lesson from the beginning of this pandemic, right? There was so much misinformation out there. No one knew exactly what to who to trust or what to trust. I think just like we have separation of church and state, we need separation of science and state, because ultimately I want to hear from scientists and medical professionals who are actually talking about what's happening with the people, for the people. There aren't like lobbyists involved in that. That's what I want to hear from. I understand what you're saying. I completely understand. I do think that it is important that we get information to people, but it has to be qualified in some capacity. So I agree with you in a lot of respects, but I do think it's important that we do understand that there is another strain and that we just continue to be vigilant.
Yeah, because what if they're sitting on it? What if they did sit on that information until they got new data? And I understand where you're coming from.
Well, then say that. Be transparent. Say we don't know much about this right now. It seemingly might be a little bit more. We don't have the numbers to do that. But
they do to a degree in the UK.
But the narrative that's out on the headlines is today, most deaths COVID's ever seen. Number one, more strain that's is coming to the U.S. Everybody panic. The numbers that they put out for COVID.
I'm going to be more hypervigilant, and because of that, and I want to be more hypervigilant if it's more contagious.
And I hear you. Listen, again, I respect the disease for what it is. And Brandon, I want to get you into this conversation.
After Jeff.
Yeah, I want to jump in, Jeff, because I share your same frustrations, but at the same time, like, what do you want them to do? And we're talking about this new virus that was brought to us in this country. Let's just talk about the first strand that hit us. It was a virus that was always changing, and the information that we kept getting was what we would get it after the scientists would know it. So of course there was going to be some mishaps. So I understand your frustration. My thing is just like, what do you want? Like, what do you want our leaders and officials to do?
First of all, follow their own direction. That's what I would love for them to do.
I agree with you
when they're saying don't go out and don't go with your families and stuff, and then you're on a plane giving those messages and you're going out to restaurants, that's the number one step. Maybe practice what you preach. Number 2 is, I don't like the control that they have over us with this virus, shutting down the whole country and everything that comes with it, and putting these numbers out that I frankly don't believe day after day are breaking their own records. There are pre-existing conditions that come with COVID. Maybe the COVID influenced that death. Maybe it didn't. I don't know where these numbers are coming from. And from Dr. Anthony Fauci from the very beginning of this, saying it's not spread through the air. You don't have to worry about a mask because they wanted to save masks. So now, since he lied about that and admittedly lied, what else are they lying about that I don't know that the reason is for?
I do need to jump in on this, because it's not influencing deaths. It's the catalyst to deaths.
In some cases.
But here's the thing: you don't want to just blanket statement that, because you have people who are having, kidney failure, organ failure. They're septic. They are have all of these different or emergency dialysis. There are so many things that have been catalyzed by COVID. If they hadn't gotten COVID, they wouldn't be in this situation. So it is a COVID-related death or COVID-related illness.
And I do agree with you, but just to play devil's advocate of that, right? Let's just take obesity, pre-existing condition, right? If you're so obese, your lungs expand when you get COVID, which causes more weight, which ultimately causes your death. But what was the cause of death? If you were going to die from a heart attack or that disease anyway, and then the COVID pushes you over the edge, what ultimately did you die from?
You died from COVID. You've never met someone who was overweight in their 90s? It doesn't.
I'm making a point very obscure, by the way, but I'm making a point here that's saying I don't believe all the deaths of COVID are related to COVID. If you die in a car accident and you happen to have COVID, they count that number as COVID. So I'm very skeptical about the numbers that they put out for COVID.
I don't believe that to be true. That if you died in a car accident and you had COVID, they're counting it as COVID. No, they're not counting it as COVID.
From things I've read and heard, yes, I've heard that.
No. I don't believe that to be true. I'm just going to say I do not believe that to be true.
Brandon?
That needs to be fact checked then, because there's one side of the country that is Team Erica on this one, and there's one side of the country that's Team Jeff on that. That needs to be fact checked, and that needs to be put out there on the open.
Said.
I agree with that, but I'm just telling you that my father gets funerals all the time that are not. Some of them aren't COVID related. It's during the age of COVID. It's very clear on what the cause of death was, and if it's a COVID death, they label it a COVID death because that means that he needs to come in with all of his PPE and all of that stuff in order to make sure that he's protecting himself. People are dying of other things. I understand that. But at the same time, these COVID numbers are not just coming out of thin air.
And you're right. And listen, I'm not dying on this hill. If I'm wrong and those numbers don't translate, I will definitely say I'm wrong. I'm just taking the other side of this. I've heard this too. If you get eaten by a shark and you have COVID, it's a COVID-related death, not a shark attack. I'm telling you, this is why I'm so confused, Erica, because these are the things that I hear and am listening to.
Well,
I'm not a conspiracy guy, but these are some of the numbers that might be proven to be true.
What would be the reason that a person would be tested for COVID after they were eaten by a shark, Jeff?
Because the government numbers are higher and they have more control over
No! Oh my God!
Hold up.
Listen, I'm telling you, this is my theory. What's wrong with it?
The good news is we have a team of producers that work with a verified team. They'll get us the facts, and at some point we will deliver that fact to our viewers. But the conversation, I'm reading your comments, is the same exact conversations you're having at home with your family members. And to Brandon's point, literally, this 50-50 dialogue that you just had is exactly what I'm reading on our.
And just to point this out, a couple months ago, the governor of Colorado got those numbers challenged because he didn't believe they were as high as he thought they were. So I'm not just making this up out of thin air. This is something that people are thinking, and I wanted to bring it up.
That's great, because then we can clarify.
Sorry we didn't get to any other stories.
No, it's good. I know we didn't get to any other stories, but hey, we had a great conversation, so that's what matters.
So I have to say, Jeff, that you're right, that in some places people are concerned that COVID deaths were being inflated, but that's not actually what's happening, because most places are drawing a distinction about death from COVID. So as a result of a complication of COVID, that's a direct complication, or death with COVID. So if you had COVID but died of a car accident or a shark bite, but doctors are legally required to report COVID if it was present at the time of death. So that's not meant to inflate the numbers. It's just something we have to put on the death certificate, and that's part of the reason that confusion is happening. But places are drawing that distinction so that we don't accidentally inflate the COVID deaths that are from COVID. Does that make sense?
And I just want to chime in. Thank you, doctor, for clearing that up, because I think I was confused a lot like other people. I'm not scared to admit when I'm wrong. So if you're telling me the facts and the truth and why you do that, I love that conversation and I love being educated on it.
But I think you're bringing up a good point, because there's been a lot of controversy of, are we over-reporting deaths? Like, if somebody loses their job and becomes depressed and commits suicide, is that a death from COVID or not? That continues to remain an outstanding question, because had the pandemic never happened, maybe that would never have happened either, But
well, it's good that we clarified that.
Absolutely.
We appreciate that, Dr. Kohli.
It's a takeover.
DBL is exactly
What we say it is.
We are honest.
We'll always tell you what we really think.
What we really think.
This is absolutely laughable.
Are you serious?
We're not just reading the stories.
We're sharing our opinions
and having real conversations.
because that is insane to me.
People are going to be upset. I can completely understand that.
Tell us your DBL take.
We want to know what you think.
You may agree with us, you may not, but that's the point.
It's a takeover. I mean, run this city.